one, and we are recording
Got
with
it.
the madman himself who swims with sharks and whales because I guess normal life is too boring and you swim with prehistoric dinosaurs who see
Like,
us as nothing more than food and something to rip to pieces with the force of God. And
well,
but
if I thought of it that way, maybe I wouldn't do it, but I haven't thought of it quite that way.
but now we are just like all the good superhero movies, and eventually you come out with the prequel to go into the backstory. We are now going into the backstory with my
Okay.
friend Paul. Please introduce yourself though for the new listeners.
Hi. Okay. Paul Mila, author, underwater photographer, scuba diver, ex-corporate guy. I had enough of corporate life way back when for a lot of reasons, and eventually just decided to make a complete um, lifestyle change. Not so much lifestyle change. My lifestyle didn't change that much, but what I was doing, I changed. That's what I was doing day to day and what I wanted to accomplish and going forward. And I didn't want to check out and leave something on the table I didn't get to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so, if I recall correctly from our first two episodes, which everyone can go find, and you also write books. You have a website, and I'll put all those in the description as always. But from what I've gathered from the last two times we talked, we talked about sharks, and then we talked about whales, and I remember asking you for a third episode. I was like, I just kind of want to go into what your corporate life was, and you were like, well, what do you want to know? I just, I kind of like to just wing it, and we've
sure.
touched on it a couple times, and it's banking. It's something about, it's kind of behind the scenes stuff that makes my current life easier, but that I don't know anything about. So let's just go into it. And I guess I'll jump on to whatever part interests me the most, and then we'll do whatever.
Okay. Well, I had a few corporate careers. I mean, I started off in retail banking, I guess you call it. I had a BA and MBA degree from St. John's in New York, and went into banking and got into different phases of business. And I kind of got attracted. Well, I was trained as an economist. That was my degree, MBA in economics. So I was actually a corporate economist at Chemical Bank for several years. Loved that because I like to write. I like to do analysis and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. It was pretty cool. And then I wanted to try something different and got into. I'm kind of like organized along a certain way. I guess I was pretty good at systems type work. I'm not a techie, but I was pretty good at those kinds of things. I became like almost a bridge between the techies and the business side of an organization.
Okay.
And eventually fell into something at the time called home banking in the 1980s, when home computers were just about getting to be semi-affordable. I mean, back in the 80s, a home computer, if you could do something with it because there was no internet, would cost about $3,000. So in today's dollars, that's probably 10 or 15, $20,000 maybe, And other than maybe putting your recipe on online somehow, not even online, onto your computer and printing it when you wanted it, there wasn't too much to do with a computer. They were clumsy. They were, I had to use all kinds of floppy disks to boot the computer up and things like that. And there was no internet, no email, you know. So a lot of banks at that time thought that home banking was going to be the wave of the future. Get rid of the brick and mortar. People could bank from home and stuff like that. So Chemical Bank at that time was one of the first to have that vision. And they came out with something called Pronto Home Banking. And they thought they could kind of franchise it to other banks. It was Crocker Bank in California and a few other banks. And they thought they could sell it. So we got this system going. And a key part of it was the bill paying part of it, where you could pay bills, which was really almost unheard of at the time, doing that from your home. One of the stumbling blocks, well, there were a few stumbling blocks. One, computers were expensive, so you couldn't do much with them. So there weren't a lot of people with computers. So Chemical partnered with Atari to come out with a low-cost computer that could do this kind of stuff. The other thing that proved to be difficult down the road was that other banks, competing banks that Chemical wanted to work with, didn't want to have their customers' information residing on Chemical Bank's mainframe computer system. It was kind of like a competitive thing. So you had these stumbling blocks that caused it to kind of like not go very, very fast. Not to mention, in those days, if you and I wanted to pay Macy's $25 each, Well, Macy's could receive $50, but they didn't have there was no protocol in the transmission to know that Tommy was getting 50 and Paul was getting 50 as a credit. They'd give the whole 50 to one person. So you had these kinds of problems, they had to be ironed out, and we had to develop these electronic protocols and interfaces to make this all happen. So it was really cutting edge back at the time. Today, and it was all what they call DOS, disk operating system stuff, which today's kids have no clue what that's all about. They don't have to. Everything is easy now. So it was really rudimentary stuff. And looking back, it was kind of like the dinosaur age of computing, but it was a lot of fun. So that's what I kind of got into, and stayed with that till almost the end of my career in different organizations.
So when you look back at so sure, yeah, it seems archaic, but I mean, it's we're standing on the shoulders of that. So I mean, if you look back at the Wright brothers or some biplanes, you go, but I mean that's what led to you being able to watch a movie in business class as you go to Tokyo on a 747.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look back at that, I mean, granted, it's always difficult to put yourself back in that mindset because now you know what you know. How is it viewed? How are other people looking at it? Was it, I can look back and go, man, if I could go back in time, that's what I'd bet on. But at the time, how did people view it? Were there detractors like this is some pipe dream shit, or was everyone?
Tough sell. It was a tough sell for a lot of reasons. One, again, computers were very expensive and they had limited use other than doing a few applications like this. So you had certain people who were like, we call them the early adopters. They plunged into it, but there weren't enough of them to really make it successful. At the time, it was a tough fall. Companies who tried this were losing money for a while. It took a long time for the market or the technology to catch up with everything, but in those days it was very difficult. And a couple of stories, people thought when they were scheduling a payment on their home computer, it was electronic end to end. Oh no, you were scheduling electronically, but the back end was all paper based. We were cutting checks, to these organizations, and it was going out as a check. So when people, and a lot of times these checks would wind up in God knows where, because now the companies weren't getting their standard little form that you would normally include with your own check and a little return document that they could feed into what they call an OCR reader, and it would get credited automatically. They're getting this paper check that they had to manually enter into their system. So you had people waiting to the last minute to make their payment because they knew it would be electronic, they thought, only to get late notices and dunning notices. So a large part of the operation was bill payment customer service, where we're fielding calls from angry people saying, "You're ruining my credit rating. Oh my God." And one of my favorite stories was some poor guy who finally got a date with this hot chick, and he made his payment to Jamaica Water Supply too late because it was on his electronic home computer. He thought he could do it late, only to have his water get cut off the day he was going to take a shower to go see this girl. And he was calling us to say, "Can you get the water turned on quickly? I'm supposed to have a date tonight. I can't take a shower. I've been out the whole day working hard," and stuff like this. We had these calls all the time. It was amazing.
So that almost seems like, I'm just trying to view it as like a parallel. Like, right, I'm thinking about, I'm 31. Tesla first comes out and it's like, oh, electric cars, this is some pipe dream shit, and then it kind of works, and the people are still, well, it works, but do you have a battery charger? We have gas stations across the nation. What about? But as it moves forward, just step by step, little bit by little bit, now we're here, and Tesla's the most valuable car company. I mean, they're a step. I don't have one, but I love riding in them. They just feel like the next. It's the difference between a touchscreen iPhone and a flip phone. You go, oh, this is the new thing, but there's a lot of little steps on its way. So I'm trying to draw parallels between.
Yeah.
So it's a tough sell. Those that do use it are like, it has all these hiccups, and it's, but it's led to this. So I guess what I'm trying to paint is, how does it change your view on kind of breaking technologies today? Like, you've seen the tough sell, the difficult adoption, the bumps in the road, but then all of a sudden here we are and it's the norm. What are you looking at today and you're going, oh, they think this is a tough sell, but I now know in 30 years,
well,
XYZ.
You raised one of the perfect ones, which was, the mandate now to end the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where we have no infrastructure and it takes 4 hours to charge a car I don't want to go on a long trip and have to stay awake, hang out for 4 hours while the car is charging, if I can even find
If you
a
can
charging
even, yeah.
station. So you look at I guess the big picture is the infrastructure. Back in the early days of what I was doing, there was no electronic infrastructure to facilitate all these payments and all these electronic messages. That came about. We had to work on these. We had to convince people that the market's going to be there. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. So they had to have enough faith that they were going to adopt these things and think it was going to pay off, which they did. It's always a tough sell to try and convince the people who have to put up the money to make this happen that it's going to happen. So today, like you said, the electric cars was one of the big best examples. You have other examples too in terms of the electric grids and things like that, and solar power and wind power and all this kind of stuff. Is it going to really replace oil in your oil burner or gas in your gas heater? You have to convince people, have to have a vision, and they also have to be in a capitalistic economy. At some point, they have to project a profit motive, or when they're going to be able to break even and make money.
Yeah, it is that. It's like everything will arise kind of around it. And it's like, well, how do we go out west? Well, I don't know. People think there's gold out there. Well, people go there and someone's got to sell food. Someone's got to sell cowboy boots. So the little towns pop up. And then all of a sudden it's, well, how are we going to get out there? We can't have everyone on wagons. Well, then you get railroads. And granted, they're built with Chinese slavery, but you eventually get out there. And it's over 200 years. It's like, oh, that's just California, sea to shining sea. But it's like, for a long time, that wasn't it. Now, what were there other things at that time that were also hard sells that you saw flop and you go, okay, well, not everything is a good idea.
Yeah,
some make it
at
through.
that time, one of the biggest flops was pay TV.
The hell's that? Well, there you go. There you
go. That they thought they were going to get people who would pay some kind of a subscription fee for some kind of programming,
Netflix.
And there was, this was before, and there wasn't much programming to sell people other than what was free all over the air. You didn't have the infrastructure that we have today of cable TV and satellite TV and stuff like that. So, pay TV, I'm going to pay money to see a television program when I can get it for free. We had our 13 channels. What else did we need?
Okay, I got you. Yeah, no. So it's not like Netflix in that it's the infrastructure didn't exist to do that sort of parallel.
You had your antennas. You look at an apartment complex and you see 40,000 little antennas on the rooftops, and that was how everybody was getting their stuff. I'm going to pay somebody to put a cable in my house. I'm going to watch a few channels. What's going to be on there? That was a long vision to be able to take place, which we have now, which we take for granted.
So as someone that pretty much grew up with the internet, I mean, I was born in 1990, by the time I really start having like formative memories, I've kind of felt like the internet was like, I remember AOL Messenger. Like I remember I do remember early like internet accessibility. So for all intents and purposes, I've grown up with it. I'm grown up in the internet era.
Yeah. What we had was what they call direct dial-up lines. In other words, all these banks had to pay what they call T1 lines, where when you called it, you didn't go into the internet to get to your bank. You had to dial into the bank directly, which created contention for lines, line capacity and bandwidth and all this kind of nonsense. So yes, that's what you had. You didn't have a lot of the stuff. And when you mentioned email, I can remember the first time that we had like corporate email. I can send a message. I'm in my little cubicle outside. You mean I can send a message to the guy in the cubicle next to me or in the office down the hall? Oh my God, this is wonderful. Let me type in, hey Joe, how are you doing today? And I'd stare at the screen and all of a sudden the letters would pop up. I'm fine, Paul. How are you doing today? Wow, this is amazing. It's email.
I remember in 4th grade, me and my friends used to send emails to each other before school. Just because we could now talk before, and we were on opposite sides of the town, and we go to, did you get my email? I got your email. And it's stupid shit. Like, hey, are you going to recess today? But it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy because here's this thing that we're in our own homes talking to each other on a screen, and it's not with the voice. So you seeing that whole thing come up, I mean, there's not many more crazy things you can live through than like before and after internet. I mean, like flight, I don't
That
know,
was a biggie.
maybe penicillin, like the phone.
Yeah, cell phone. I mean, cell phones are, we talk about, if you want to talk about a new product, not new today, but a product that changed people's lives, the cell phone is pretty much a great example of changing people's lives, how you do things, I mean,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
remember even being in school, we used to learn about the Industrial Revolution. Wow, I guess that's over. What's next? I mean, what's left? Everything's been invented already.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so I love that argument that it's like the affordable cell phone with an affordable data plan has altered society more than any amount of bombs or artillery could. Like it's the way it
Yeah,
just sort of dissolves existing. All of a sudden, nothing matters anymore. It's like, oh, you have a wall around your city, but I have a phone, and it's
yeah,
just it just nullifies it.
yeah.
What do you look at? What future thing do you see as so like I don't have any of those existing experiences of like that's a tough sell and then I see it come to fruition. I mean, maybe I see like I did start listening to Joe Rogan before his podcast was even a year old. And I remember
Mhm.
thinking, I was like, oh, this guy's having 3 hour conversations and they're just shooting the shit. I was like, this is and that was my junior year of college. And I remember thinking, I was like, this is gonna be big. And I was right. What other things just looking at your business experience do you see as like another sort of tsunami coming where you're like this is going to demolish the status? I mean, is it
Well,
AI? Is it
yeah, AI, artificial intelligence. Yes, that's when machines begin thinking for themselves and they can fix themselves, program themselves, express their wishes, whatever that might mean. That's the human mechanical. I don't know. Not mechanical is probably the wrong word. Mechanical sounds old, but the human technical interface, whatever it's called,
sure?
that's a biggie. Or are we going to control machines or are they going to control us?
Yeah,
A few years ago, I said, well, that's a stupid question. We're always going to control machines. But then you see what these things can do.
yeah.
First, just the mechanical aspect. If you've seen some of these things on 60 Minutes where they show them jumping around like, almost like a
Boston
semi-human.
Dynamics. Yeah,
And then you read about how they're able to repair themselves in some cases and do various things. Some of these Mars rovers, if they have a problem, they can actually fix themselves and stuff. So, I think about the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, where we had Hal. By the
I'm
way,
sorry, I can't let you do that.
do you ever think about where the word Hal came from, why they named him Hal?
No.
Okay. Hal is spelled Hal.
Hal 9000.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the letter after H in the alphabet?
I
After A.
B M.
After L is M. IBM.
God, I was thinking, Al Gore claims to have invented the internet, right? Which obviously is bullshit. I
Yeah.
was thinking, man, what's the one thing everyone talks about? The algorithm. It's the algorithm. But
Okay. I hadn't heard that one. Okay. That's good.
I think I made that one up. I'm proud of that one. But yeah, it's it seems like that's the next thing sort of coming where because I was thinking about this the other day. There's this AI, I think it's called GPT. It's like GPT-3, and it's the third iteration of it. And it's not like a robot like Boston Dynamics, like it's a supercomputer. It's like a stack of servers somewhere, but it has like a constructed image. So it's like me. It's like
Mhm.
an average of like all the races, and it's like a guy, and he's just talking. It looks like he's in an office. It's not like there's no actual robot. It's just a computer generated thing. But he's like 10 times smarter than GPT-2, who's 10 times smarter than GPT-1. And the first ones were kind of like, but GPT-3, you can find videos where podcasters will actually like schedule podcasts with GPT-3 and just kind of talk to it. And it's starting to kind of get the hair on your neck where you're like, if it's very intelligent, right? It's like Alexa. You can ask, like, what is the weather in Singapore? And it can tell you, right? Okay, sure. Well, that's
Mhm.
impressive. But with enough processing power and access to data, well, anyone could do that, right? Give me enough time, I'll tell you what the weather in Singapore is. But it's starting to do this. There's like this other level to it where they're like, what does it feel like to be a computer? And it's like, well, I am not a computer. Although I'm based on software chips, I am no different than you, who is based on proteins in your brain. We are both entities. And it's like,
Right.
What did that
Oh,
thing just say? Well,
yeah.
that got me thinking about like telemedicine, right? We're seeing telemedicine right now with
Right.
COVID. Well, what if you had a a thing that was based on like the Mayo Clinic's like physician's reference? What if you were able to take the smartest doctors and create an amalgamation of the hyper doctor, and then that was just a server somewhere? You could now have world-class medicine for everyone in the world. Everyone could talk to the best psychiatrist at any given. It could be as easy as, hey Siri, you could literally pull it up, be like, I got to talk to my doctor. And it could be a doctor that used to only be accessible to people with a ton of money and resources who lived in the proximity of this doctor. How is that going to change the world when all of a sudden everybody can just pull up their phone and, not WebMD, but actually get
Mhm.
world-class medical feedback from mental care to I have a chest pain to my diet? How is that going to is it going to dissolve the existing world that we see?
Well, what's interesting about what you're kind of touching on is that you're almost like talking about storing consciousness.
Sure.
And then what is consciousness? I mean,
Yeah.
we've always talked about us having a soul, that's our conscious and stuff like that. And I'm sure hope we have souls and things like that. Other than because if you think about when they talk about when people's brains don't work properly, okay, everything seems to go. There's nothing else but the brain seems to control everything.
Mhm.
I'm hoping we're more than just a bunch of synapses and neurons that happen to be connected, in a certain way that produces what we're calling consciousness and a soul and everything else. Because if it's nothing more than like almost electromechanical or electrophysical, it gets kind of scary. And then you wonder what you can do with all that. Where can you store that consciousness? Where does it go? What can it do? Gets kind of scary.
Yeah, and it can kind of bring on like a depressing nihilist attitude. I remember I kind of had that experience while studying biology in college. I was like, if we're all right, I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, I'm tired. And I would just like a normal college student, not at all. But I would do things with myself where I would literally, I'd get up like a Word document and I would write about how I felt right now. And I'd just be looking around and be like, weather's this, I got to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then I did this like 10 times in college. Like the first time it was like, I took like a Red Bull and I drank it quickly and I waited 5 minutes and then wrote how everything changed. I was like, oh, I can hear the birds chirping. I'm like high on caffeine. And then I did one where it was alcohol. I did one where it was NyQuil. I did one where it was weed. I was doing all these just, and it kind of started to make me sad because I was like, am I, what is this? This is a cup of gasoline. What is this? This is a match. Put it together. Now we have light and heat. Here's baking soda and vinegar. And I started to look at things. I was like, is this just, 1 + 1 is 2? Is it really just I'm just prodding these proteins and folds and there's blood and
Mhm.
electrophysiology and then I add this and now I'm awake and then I add this and now I'm tired and I fall in love and there's dopamine and everything's beautiful.
Yeah, we
You
nothing
have a
more than
yeah.
reactions. It's a
That's
series of
what
chemical reactions.
I started to feel like that and that made me depressed for a couple years, but now I start to look at it more like I love the idea of are we just receivers, right? If I all of a sudden just punch through my iMac, I didn't
Mhm.
I didn't kill Paul. I didn't kill Tommy's podcast. I just got to get a new computer, but the internet's still there. If I break my car radio, that didn't destroy the radio station or
Right.
the airwaves. As just I'm not receiving that anymore, which then got me because that falls in line with well, if you tweak a radio, it's still, just chemical you're just changing things. Is this just the radio? Are we just receiving this thing? And sure, it can be destroyed or it dies, and you experience it as, oh, my grandma passed away, or you experience it as, oh, I'm sad and happy. But do we, the I, the self, does that get destroyed, or is that just picked up by another receiver?
Yeah, I mean, what you can almost get to the point of asking, what is self?
Yeah,
What is self? I
that
mean,
there is no deeper question.
when you look at what's I'm drawing a blank here. When you have the children who can't process, what's that called again? When they just kind of are kind of blank.
Uh, um,
Oh, what's the name?
Autism,
What kind of autism? Yeah,
Down syndrome.
no, levels of autism. What autistic kids? who have difficulty processing the world around them. They need quiet. They need this. They know what is all that. What is that all about? I mean, is it just because they have certain electrochemical receptors in their brains that aren't working properly, or is it something else? It gets you to wonder about a lot of these relationships as far as how we perceive the world. Do we just react to the world, or do we act on the world?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Is
What's
it,
controlling that?
yeah, is autism or other mental illnesses, are those like an old TV where with the rabbit ears and you got to shift them, and it's the TV still works, you can still
Yeah,
get Walter
yeah,
Cronkite,
yeah.
but some of them maybe need a little more care than others, and that would still fall in line with, it doesn't violate the idea of like we do, you can add caffeine or alcohol and change it, but you have to.
Is how we perceive the world, does that control everything that we then think? Like if we
Absolutely
can't
it does.
if we can't hear properly, if we can't see properly, if we can't process the input, what happens to the input if we can't process it? Does
Yeah.
this stay jumbled in our heads and it doesn't come out the right way when we want to try and make it do something, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's yeah, you're not getting it all, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's like this idea that like all consciousness is, it's like the sun. And like right now I'm in a dark room, and you could stay in a dark room for your whole life. You might even forget what the sun's like. You have artificial lights, you have a heater, and it kind of simulates everything, right? You can look at pictures of flowers, and then one day like you notice like some light coming through the wall, and you open it and you're like, oh yeah, and you step outside, and all of a sudden you're in a field and the sun's on your skin and it's warm, and the sun was never not there. You were just cutting yourself off from the experience. It never went away, right? If it's a cloudy night or if there's light pollution, you can't see the stars. Stars didn't go anywhere. A street light does not make a distant star disappear. You just can't see it.
Right.
You have to start wondering, is that what the soul is? Is that what God is? Is this, are our lives temporary, changing the channel? Right now I'm experiencing Tommy, and it's just a shift. I'm just looking at something through a different lens with a, different filter, but the actual light source cannot be destroyed. And, I mean, it's written in the Bhagavad Gita like 5,000 years ago, but I was just watching a thing the other day, some guru in India, and he was like, everything in front of you, like it might be an illusion. Like you might be in a dream, you might be in a simulation, you might be a brain in a vat. But the one thing that isn't erroneous is that I am. Now, am I really talking to Paul? Am I just dreaming right now? Am I having a fever dream? Did I take a nap and Paul's calling me going, dude, what the fuck? We're doing an episode and I'm snoring in my bed? Or are we actually talking? Or is this just a dream and I don't even exist and there is no earth and 9/11 didn't happen because it's all a dream? Maybe, but I still am. I am here right now. There is something. The I exists, and that is melted all the way down. You can't go farther back than the self. I am.
Right.
And it's, once you stem from there, man, I mean, I don't know how we started with corporate banking, and
Well, the other thing now you were touching on also that got me thinking too was that when you talk about us here perceiving what we perceive, when you talked about a parallel universe where you could theoretically have parallel universes existing side by side, not knowing the other one is really there.
Sure.
Which one is the real one? Which is, so you get into these real heavy topics that, I kind of like zone out because I said, I don't have the mental equipment to really figure this one out. But it kind of like, it causes you to think about it.
Well, that's one thing I love about that stuff is I love meditation because it's kind of like working out. I mean, you go into the gym and someone says bench press 500 pounds, you can't do that. But if you start doing push-ups, I mean, and you just do it every day for a decade, and all of a sudden you're throwing around some weight in the weight room and you're like, oh, I can do this now. Well, that's why I like meditation. That's why I kind of like pushing those boundaries. You can't do too much at once because you'll lose your shit. But just a little bit. And so it's just like right now, we're just kind of pushing up against it. What is the self? What is reality? What is AI? Is AI any less real than us? Because then you start to like building a muscle, you're expanding what you see as theoretically possible, right? I mean, that's what someone had to have, that boundary of what if we could pay our bills from home? Like someone had that initial kind of wacky thought.
You need those people.
Well, that's what pushes it forward, is you just you push it forward a little bit at a time, and then the rest of society kind of catches up and they do all the groundwork and the infrastructure.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to, Elon Musk has to go, let's go live on a different planet, right?
Yeah,
You have to have that.
you have to kind of overcome what I would say is inertia. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
you have the status quo, and to push that status quo somewhere, you're pushing against the mass of what is at
Yes.
that point in time, and you have to get that. It takes some strong personality or personalities to get that done, and that's, I guess, why we have certain people who are, who they are, who, the people who break the mold of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Joseph Lister. Joseph Lister had the crazy idea that, we should clean wounds with alcohol before we start operating on them.
Yeah, as the Civil War doctors were operating on open wounds with dirty hands. Yes.
He came to the United States. There's a fantastic book called The Butchering Art by Lindsay Fitzharris, and it's all about this. And you hear about like medical school in the 1800s. There'd just be rooms with people. There'd just be like severed hands and stuff, and just blood and pus everywhere. They would wear the same gowns every day, like a painter's like a garment or something. It would just be sticky with blood and pus. But they didn't. They were just like, yeah, it's whatever. And then, he started going like, hold on, I'm doing this stuff where I'm like cleaning patients with alcohol. I'm giving them chloroform and they can't feel the pain. He came to the United States and went on like back before like TV, he went on like a train tour, kind of like Harry Truman, went on like a train tour and talking to all the top physicians in the United States. He was laughed out of town. They're like, the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea that something you could barely see with a powerful magnifying glass, let alone a microscope, something that small could have a negative effect on the human body was a revolutionary concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And then imagine the idea of, global armies marching against each other, and the thing that ends it all is someone took an atom and split it. That's what stopped the war. It wasn't our destroyers and our waves of B-17s and men storming D-Day. Nope. It was something you couldn't see, split.
Right.
And that's what ended it. That always got you kind of to cross back to what you're talking about is, do we actually affect the world, or do we just perceive it? And it's going to be a weird segue, but like Steve Jobs said, like one of the most important moments in like an entrepreneur's life or an inventor's life is the moment that they realize that the world and that society isn't static. It's not like, oh, the sun rises and the sun, he goes, no, like little things like you can create your own. No, he describes it as when you push something and something else pops out, and then you go, oh, I'm actually a player in the game. I'm not just watching TV. I'm part of the conversation, and I can shift it and manipulate it. And then that opens the door to, you can create Apple. You can create $1 trillion corporation. You can change the world. Now, if we take that jump, and this is, I'm stretching here, but the double slit experiment, where if someone is viewing an electron, right, it acts as a wave, and if they're not viewing it, it acts as a part, or vice versa. But the idea that conscious observation affects what form this electron has. Is it a probability waveform, like a wave function, or does it collapse into a definitive particle, right? The not Pauli exclusion principle, or whatever the theoretic, whatever it is. So let's take Steve Jobs, and now let's kind of take it with the double slit experiment. Is there a quantum 2001: A Space Odyssey? The monkey grabs the tool, bum bum, and that moment where
of enlightenment,
the world just forget the internet. The monkey just discovered the tool. It's on par with the fish growing like limbs and coming out of the water.
Yeah.
Is the next, boom, 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 is the next moment when we go, wait, can we change the physical world? Not just with, I can push stuff, but I mean, truly, if you start focusing on things, if you can collapse a waveform, what if you start imagining anything? Is that the next? I mean, is that the monkey using the opposable thumb, where all of a sudden we go, oh, forget tools, our observation is a tool? I mean, is that it? Is that the next?
Yeah, I mean, there's two aspects to that. One, I've always wondered what makes that monkey different from other monkeys? Like what makes Steve Jobs different from other people? Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'd all be doing this.
Yeah.
There are these people who have that vision, and either there's the strength to push the vision ahead, which is remarkable in and of itself. Not everybody does. People say if it gets too tough, they kind of say, "Oh well, heck with it," But just stepping back to have that vision, what makes that one person able to have that vision and most of us not? You
Yeah.
know, I don't know. The other thing, to your point about changing the world and stuff, there was this thing I was watching one day about the environment and how people are messing up the world and stuff like that, and how we got to this point. And they were saying it wasn't too many generations ago where human beings or a human being felt, how could I ever impact the world? In other words,
Yeah.
negatively. It's been an all of a sudden a breakthrough for in a kind of maybe a negative sense for people to actually affect the planet. If you take your average caveman who was way back when was only concerned with surviving to the next day, the fact that he might somehow change the world by his actions, change the world like we're changing it now today, that was so far beyond people's consciousness to say humans can actually warm the planet, they can affect the weather, they can do this, they can do that. How could that be? But here we are, and that was something that just was never occurred to people 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Yeah, I remember listening to Joe Rogan saying that years ago. He was like, if you went back to like early 1900s to some Rockefeller guy, and they were lobbying against trolleys because they were like, we want more cars because cars have to use gas.
Mm-hmm.
If you had gone up to them, these guys with top hats and obviously there's color, but I just imagine it's all black and white. If you went up to one of them and they're like, hey, I know you're pushing for more cars because it's your profit motive, but if you do that, you're gonna kill polar bears. They'd be like, what the hell are you smoking?
What? You're gonna do what?
Yeah, get out of my office.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So
nobody's dreamed that humans could have that kind of effect on our existence, our world.
So what are we doing right now that is the equivalent of, because a Model T burning gas back in 1900s were emitting the same molecules. It's not like we invented some new reaction, right? I mean, we had the catalytic converter, but it's still creating the same carbon monoxide, CO2 that we're doing today. I mean, a caveman, technically, if he started a fire, was creating CO2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same. It's kind of like the sunlight analogy we used earlier. If you're locked in a house and you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. The same CO2 is there, right? Just because George Washington didn't know he had a double helix DNA structure doesn't mean he didn't have it. So what are we doing right now that is killing polar?
Well,
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be negative. It could be a positive thing. What are we doing right now?
But back then, I think they thought everything was pretty much infinity. There were no finite limits. Okay.
Yeah.
Today, I think we realize we have finite limits to what we're doing. The single or a few Model Ts burning out, emissions. Well, okay, so what? Nobody dreamed that you could have like 50 million of these things. What would that do? That was that kind of thinking wasn't really there, and that gets you to thinking. The one thing I've been thinking about is when you get to the capacity of our planet and things like that, we are really like lifeboat Earth. We're on this thing, and there's no other lifeboats around us. If this doesn't work out, we're not going to Mars in time to save our population or the planet, whatever. And that gets me to thinking at least about capacity limits.
Yeah.
Like what do you do? And here's the analogy. If you ever see an old-fashioned movie, there was one of the movies. It was called Lifeboat, I think, whatever, where you have a lifeboat with a capacity of 40 people that already has 50 people on it, and then you got another 60 people in the water saying, "Can I get on the boat?" You have some tough choices to make, and I think that's where we're headed with this planet.
I think you're absolutely correct, right? I mean, it's right. The lifeboats.
It's kind of depressing, but
it's also reality. I mean, but it's right. It's the lifeboats in the water after the Titanic. There's all of us in here, and there are all these people freezing to death, hollering out. But either some of us survive and most of us die, or none. Who gets to make that choice? Yeah. And ultimately, it comes down to it's probably force.
Yes, that's what you get down to. The people in the lifeboat who have those oars who can pound the other people as get off my lifeboat.
So
that's kind of scary. But that unless we make some tough choices as far as population limits, other limits, whatever, I think we realize that we have a finite capacity to support what we want to do here. And, I'm not smart enough to figure out the answer to that right now, but leads us to some interesting conclusions.
Well, that then goes to, oh, if you're a billionaire or if you're the government, well, what do you have? You've got a Cheyenne Mountain, you've got a nuclear bunker, you've got weapons,
Yeah.
you've got, hey, if we have to, when shit hits the fan, we'll see what's real and what's not. But then that has to get you thinking as to like, how does that shift? Is this just a natural progression in, I try not to look at like humans as we're just humans, there's a beginning and now we're here. I try to look at it as like one long earthborn life forms, like carbon-based life forms. I kind of look at us as like one long extension, and they're just like there are short white guys or tall black guys. I also look at it as like there are humans, but then there, as you know, and there are whales and there are snails and there are birds. Is pushing the capacity of the planet. I mean, there's divergent roads, right? One is population control, another is depopulation, another is we're all dead. There's a climate feedback system. But does this also push for selection? Does this go, oh, we got to get to Mars, or and then this is one thing I've thought about a lot is, you look at some like Ray Kurzweil, and he's like, the population will go to 10 billion, 20 billion, and people say the planet can't hold it or provide for it. But the reality is like there'll be technologies progressing at the same time that will allow even greater crop yields, and it will actually match. I tend to think that it will be something we didn't even see coming, right? It's like, if you go back to the night, there's like this magazine article from the year 1900, and it's predictions of the year 2000. And it's everyone will have a personal hot air balloon, and like firefighters will have like these mechanical wings. And it's like, they were wrong, but they weren't. Everyone does have personal transportation. Everyone does have access to flight. We don't have firefighters with wings, but we do have 747s that can drop water on a forest fire. I think that we will go forward, but it won't be in a way we thought. It won't be that we'll have these vertical farms, but more so, you said it earlier, well, what if we all merge with machines? And all of a sudden you have a machine with my consciousness on a silicon wafer that's powered by sunlight or nuclear energy. Now, all of a sudden, you don't need to grow carrots anymore. You don't need the Great Plains. You don't need food trucks if we're all on a computer that can run off one nuclear power. And all of a sudden, well, then what's the limit? We could have 100 trillion souls if they all existed on a hard drive.
Yeah, I don't know if you can put them on there, but
yeah,
but to your point about technology kind of bailing us out, it has before, because I think way back now I forget what, if we're talking the 1800s or the 19 or 1700s, the Malthusian theory or something like that James Malthus predicted that the human race would die out because we could only support so many people with our food. We can only grow so much food for this many people. He was thinking in terms of whether it was 1700s or 1800s, that kind of technology, saying, nope, this is all the food you can produce. Well, guess what? To your point, technology kind of bailed us out. We're able to have crop yields way beyond what people dreamed about, several hundred years ago. So we've been able to support a much larger population than anyone ever dreamed of, who did some forward thinking way back when. But I don't know how much, can technology keep doing that when you have it's tough to put 10 gallons of water into a 5-gallon bucket at some point.
Yeah. But then, I mean, we could go back way before the 1700s. I mean, go back to like the caveman. He's got like his wife and kid, and he's like, this cave is big enough for us three. We can't bring in a fourth person. And then all of a sudden we have like a community, and it's like, well, us 10 can hang out together, but we're not going to be able to kill more meat. And then it's the monkey picking up the tool. Okay, well, I mean, it went from, a couple of cavemen saying this is all we can provide for, to now it's, I mean, our country, we're not even the biggest country in the world, and we've got 350 million. Like, it might very well keep bailing us out. I mean, why wouldn't it? Now, that might be time for some tough awakenings where you do hit like a critical feedback limit, but it also might drive selection. It might drive you have to go to Mars, right? You have to go to the moon. And then once we do that, I mean, that might be the technological bailout where all of a sudden we go, oh, we've got 9 planets in the solar system. We don't need to figure out interstellar travel yet. We found 9 more Earths right here. We'll just,
Well,
go.
now you get into like what I've seen a few times on some of these old space movies, where the folks who are visiting us had that problem, and they've discovered Earth. They were looking for a place to go to, and look at this. This is an inhabitable planet. My goodness. Well, these pesky humans are here, but we can get rid of them.
We'll kill them real quick.
So, it's we could branch out to the solar system, or the solar system might find us first.
Might branch out to us. I mean, hey, in British imperialism in Africa was that was 200 years ago, man. And I mean, we're still doing it today, right? We go in with the International Monetary Fund and we build all this infrastructure that we know they can't pay us back for. And then when they default, we go, just give us, rights to your cobalt mine. And then all of a sudden we're in there and we're raping and pillaging this land, but it's for our country. So what do we care? Yeah, man. Well, who says a UFO doesn't pull up and go, ooh, you guys got some oceans. You guys got some timber. But again, I think that might be, we're looking at it through our own lens. In the future, everyone will have a hot air balloon. We might break away from the need for organic food. I mean, if let's forget even uploading to a computer, let's just say let's say I get like an artificial heart and some artificial lungs and whatever, and all my organs are artificial. Well, they're not running on carbohydrates and fat. It might just be I have to plug into the wall. Well, it's a lot easier to provide, right? Nuclear energy, right? It's the analogy I heard from a nuclear fusion scientist I interviewed was to take X amount of energy, you would need 300 train cars full of coal per day for a whole year, and you get X. For a nuclear reactor, for a fission reactor, you need 1/2 of a train car full of enriched uranium ore for the full year. So 300 train cars per day for a year versus half a train car for the whole year. And that's a fission reactor. A fusion reactor, you would need 1 milliliter of seawater for the whole year. So that might be technology bailing us out. If we just shift because what is food really? It's a power source. So if we shift our power source to, I mean, if the whole world was running off wood stoves in your living room, yeah, we'd run out of wood, but we don't do that anymore. Now we plug into the wall, you have a radiator, right? So it might be that we just completely sidestep it to where, oh, you don't need to eat anymore. We're all solar powered.
That could, those kinds of aspects could be. Now you touched on the one with food, how do we power our bodies? I don't know, we can power, we have alternatives to figuring out how we're going to heat ourselves, like you just touched on. We go from wood to whatever we're going to, as far as, whatever our human bodies need in terms of carbohydrates, proteins, and things like that. I don't know that you can change that equation, with our current physiology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we invent a new human down the road that doesn't need all these carbohydrates and proteins and whatever and fat and things like that to live on. But until you do that, I don't know. It's a tricky thing. I don't know if you're going to be able to have the resources to provide for an ever expanding population like that.
And you're right. I mean, yeah, that multi-billion-year-old system of proteins and carbohydrates and lipids, that might be a lot harder to update. We didn't update the telegraph. We built a new technology entirely. Right. That might be AI. It might be, like something will continue. It's not going to be humans. Like it might be something that from the ground up runs on silicon and electricity instead of, bread and meat.
Mm-hmm. Then to complicate factors, when you talk about selection or natural selection or unnatural selection, who gets to be the selector? You have this is a big social aspect now. How do you determine who gets to go to another planet? Who gets on that rocket? Is it like, we take 1/3 of this group, 1/3 of this group, 1/3 of this group equally, or more of one group than another group? I mean, those are battles that we're probably not going to be around to have to fight, but somebody's going to have to figure that out down the road.
When you're in the lifeboat and everyone's screaming, do you go, we're going to take a third of those people, a third of those people, or do you go, I'm on the boat, I have the oar?
Yeah.
Who has the weapons? Who has the nuclear bunker? That's who's choosing.
Well, not to go over into military aspects of it, but I've heard that right now, how the military simulates war games and things like that. They've been working. I don't know if we're talking CIA, military, or some other phase of the government, but they've been working on these plans based on, or actually it's been accelerated because of global warming. But they see where people live and where there's not going to be any land anymore. Where are these people going to go? And I've heard that they're working on. Now, when I say working on, I don't think anybody's come to any conclusions, but trying to figure out, okay, what do you do? What do you put all these people? What if your country's maxed out and now you have people whose lands are now covered by water want to come in, and perfect lifeboat analogy. Well, is there any more room to let them in? Do you want to let them in, or do you just say, sorry, folks, figure it out for yourselves? Look at in the paper today that we had these 3,000 Haitians in Texas. We're putting them on planes back to Haiti where they don't want to go, and the Haitians don't. So we can't take care of these people here. That's a very small scale, But I think what I've read is that the government, in some kind of, when I say secret, I have no idea what that could be, but or is working on this from a global perspective, and I don't know what conclusions are coming to.
It's going to be the haves versus it's going to be, the universe is indifferent. The reality is indifferent. We look at it as everyone should get a shot. It's going to be who's closing the vault doors, who has the 50 cals pointed at the entrance. That's what it's going to be. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Everything's going to shift. Everyone's going to migrate. It's going to be, so we're either going to select for a new technology that's going to save us, or we're rapidly approaching a mass extinction of humanity. And then you have to start wondering, is this some feedback loop? Is the Earth as a living biosphere, was COVID just the beginning? Is it going to hit us with another one? Is it some feedback mechanism where it's like you're destroying everything and there's no one consciously doing it, but it's like almost kind of like swatting at a fly? Is the planet just has mechanisms to where it releases COVID? And as the situation gets more desperate, so does the planet. So then it releases Ebola mixed with smallpox.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting aspect. Like, it's does the planet have some kind of consciousness of its own?
Yeah. Is it just a feedback mechanism,
or is that nature, or is that God?
yeah. Is it conscious, or is it just a feedback mechanism? Right. I mean, if a forest fire goes long enough, it just burns out the fuel. No one said end the forest fire. It just stopped burning. Right. I mean, clearly there were forest fires before humans ever existed, and they eventually did stop. Why'd they stop? Well, they burned through everything. It was just sort of a natural limit. Is that something the planet does when there's too many people? Is it just it just goes and just shoots it back? Here's Ebola. Here's smallpox. I mean, who knows?
I mean, the answer might be that big asteroid that's on its way here that won't get here for another 1,000 or 2,000 years. That solves a lot of problems.
I don't know which one you're talking about. Have you heard of Apophis?
No. Which is that?
It's coming on Friday the 13th, April 2029.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be between us and the moon, which in cosmic terms is like a bullet grazing your hair.
Yes, that's a near miss.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is we're not entirely sure it's going to miss.
Okay, I hadn't heard about that one.
Yeah, Apophis, Apophis.
What's scary is they track these things, in space. They can see them coming and stuff like that, for the most part. Especially because when they're taking time-lapse photography of the stars, and they can see, there's a, wait a minute, that little dot now is like, it's a dash. It means it's moving someplace, whatever. What they can't see, I read about, are the ones that are coming directly head on, because there's no dash, there's no
parallax.
It's just a little dot that maybe it gets bigger as it gets closer, but they're not going to see it until it's too late. Is a head-on shot coming at us. Now, is that going to be the solution to our problems? Make everything talking about academic? I don't know.
I mean, maybe
I'm
we
looking
look
at
at
the solution.
the solar system as like a whole entity, from the Oort cloud all the way in. Maybe that's one cell. I mean, if you look at like the sphere of the Oort cloud, it's like, on super far out, way past Pluto, but we're basically the sphere of like ice and rock pieces. The solar system's on the inside. I mean, that might be one cell, right? Like a cell, just like a spherical cell. And the galaxy might be an organism, and that's one of 100 billion cells. I mean, right? We have 100 trillion cells in us. Who's to say it's not one cell? And the cell itself, there might be some weird feedback mechanism for, the asteroid might not have been an accident. It might have been the cell is going, something is disrupting on this planet, and it's, so it throws
Check
in
it
this
out.
asteroid, and it's
Well, now when you talk about the universe and the cosmos, and you talk about the theory of not they're not theories, but black holes, they do exist, and everything goes into it. And there's some theories that say, well, when it goes in, it's coming out on the other side of something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I guess that's where you get into like parallel universes and things like that. I don't know. Um,
Well, then it kind of comes down to, but it really, all of this comes down to the self. Is it doesn't, well, am I dreaming all of this? Is this all real? And if it is just, if I am just a receiver for this, then what do I care if this personal radio that is me breaks down and doesn't make the cut and I'm not allowed on the lifeboat or whatever? But that's not destroying the actual music on the airwaves. It's just that radio's gone, which
right.
means that not only will this model, this radio model called Tommy, not only will this one eventually break down and die,
Mm.
but that also means that, well, if I can't die because I'm just a signal being received, that means I also wasn't created with this thing. So if I buy a brand new radio today and turn it on and I hear, Stairway to Heaven, I break it and now I don't hear it anymore. I didn't get rid of the song. But what that also means is the song was playing before I turned the radio on. Is that reincarnation? Have I been here before?
Well, now you're touching on something else that you wonder about. When the lights go out, do they really go out for good? Or do you like I was talking about not talking. I was reading a thing about a cancer patient. She was talking about there was a cancer patient who knew she knew how much time she had to live. It was one of those things that she knew her time was limited and she was going to make the most of it. And she said something very interesting that kind of stuck with me for a long time. She said, "I don't fear dying, the process of dying. I'll handle that. What scares me is not existing anymore. Like the consciousness, all of a sudden, that going out. Physical death, physical death. Like, it might hurt, maybe it won't be over, whatever. But do I then, does my consciousness go away? Do I just not exist?" She was having a tough time perceiving herself as not existing anymore. In other words, that's it. And that's,
No,
I don't know.
sure. Yeah, no. And I've thought about that a lot through meditation over the last like decade is, and like really the most kind of conclusive point I came to was it's not it's not death like the lights going out. If I turn out all the lights in here, all the lights are out,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still here experiencing darkness. If the actual consciousness goes out, you can't experience non-existence. It's not an experience. Falling asleep, like I leave this world and I experience a false world and then I wake back up into this world. That's not the same as prior to August 7th, 1990, when I was born. How did it feel to not exist? Was it Mark Twain who said, I don't fear death. I didn't exist for billions of years and I didn't, it wasn't harmful at all.
I never heard that one.
Yeah. Well, what was it like to exist during the T-Rex? You don't know.
Yeah.
What was it like to exist with Abe Lincoln? You don't know. So it's not an experience. It doesn't exist. So that's and I mean, obviously I don't mean to sound shallow about it. I mean, because I'm not that I know of, I'm not facing terminal illness. I'm sure it's a terrible thing to approach. But I don't know. It's I've had him on here before several times. Dr. Eben Alexander, who's a Harvard neurosurgeon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally a Harvard brain surgeon. I mean, like it's comically intelligent, right? That's like who's the smartest person in the world? I don't know, a Harvard brain surgeon. He's literally a Harvard brain surgeon, but he fell into a coma in like 2008 or something, and he had like a 1 in 300 million chances of surviving, and he survived. And he was in this super rare form of infection where he just kind of lights out for like 7 days, and he came back and he went into it as an atheist and came out just going like, oh, I experienced heaven. And they were doing like EKGs and MRIs and fMRIs of his brain. They're like, there was no activity, but he remembers those 7 days as the most vivid of his life, like experiencing the universe and all its different levels, which makes you have to start thinking like, is this just the radio? Are we filtering this? Are we manipulating it? And it's like what Aldous Huxley said about the mind at large when he was on, writing on mescaline. He was like, the mind is like, the human mind is like a faucet for like a huge amount, like a pool, like an above ground pool. It's a faucet, and like we limit it in certain ways. If you destroy the faucet, well, then you just experience it's just pure water. There's no, like a sprinkler, you can put it on different settings. You break it off, it's pure water. It might not be that when this is destroyed, you experience nothing. On the contrary, you might experience far more than you ever could.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, but now the more you're talking about that, I'm thinking about what you were talking about earlier about putting us on a chip or something. If our self, what is our self? Okay, what is the self? If the self is the amalgamation or conglomeration of all our physical, or synapses and things like that in our brain, and you can take all that and put it onto some kind of a chip or something mechanical, or not electromechanical, computerized, whatever. Does that continue to think after our physical body is used up and gone? Like you've taken that conscious, all those conscious electro synapses that were probably stored in some kind of cells, and you store it in a different format on a chip or on something, right? While it's on there, is it thinking? Is it sensing anything? What's it doing?
Ultimately, if everything is just the self, then the computer chip was always just an illusion. The body was an illusion. You were never actually here.
I guess we're not here.
On that, let's wrap this one up, Paul. Well, we started with at-home banking, and now we're at the greatest question of life. I think, therefore I am.
Works for me.
You know what? Yeah, when you have that conversation, you go, fuck it, I'm quitting. I'm going to swim with whales. What does it matter? What does any of this shit matter? I'm going to go swim with sharks. The water's beautiful.
It is. Don't leave anything on the table. Experience, if our self is a conglomeration also of our experiences, our life experiences, I want to pack it with as many experiences as I can. And I guess we all have different experiences that we want to accomplish. And I think the thing is to go do them while you can.
If I really don't exist and nothing is real, then yeah, why go be a doctor when I wasn't happy? Screw it. I'm going to make a podcast and do whatever I want because nothing matters. Until next time, I'll text you. We'll set up another one. That was fucking fun.
Okay.
Mr. Paul Mila, thank you very much for coming on. I think we both blew each other's brains. I'm a little kind of dazed right now. And
I'm going to go have a margarita.
I think you're right, man. I don't think that's a bad. What does it matter? What does it matter? It's nothing. It's a beautiful thing. But I guess on a closing note, it's a lot of people when they talk about kind of this experience like we're having right now, they say it's depressing because nothing matters. I look at it on the other side. You're free. Nothing matters.
Okay.
You're free. It's beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful than realizing nothing matters.
No worries. No worries.
Exactly. Don't worry. Be happy. Paul Mila. I'll put the links to your books and your photos and all that good stuff in the description. And I'll text you. We'll set up another one. And
great.
Thank you very much, man. That was a great talk.
Thank you. I had fun.
Me too, man.
Take
all right,
care.
Paul.
Bye.